order. This is Monday, December 9th, the Central Vermont Career Center School District Board. Welcome, everyone. It does not appear that we have any guests. We all agreed to be calm, controlled, and polite people. So we'll go on with that. And Jody, any correspondence or anything for the board?
That's not on the agenda.
Okay, any public comment? Anyone, any board members get any communications or comments? Is that somebody joined or is there a hand
Lyman.
up? Oh, it's Lyman, you have a hand up?
Yeah, but not for that.
Okay.
After you're done with the public comment.
Okay, so public comment is done. Now, we need to approve the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
Jana, I need a second.
Second.
All right, now, any discussion? Any additions or discussion about the agenda?
I need to add something in there, I guess, at some point.
Okay, this is when you do it.
All right, just to let y'all know that I'm taking a job down in Pennsylvania for next year, and so I won't be finishing out my term, and so we'll be putting an election together for town meeting day.
Congratulations.
Don't do it, Lyman.
I don't
Don't
know
do it.
response. I also think we should just do introductions since Corey is joining us.
Oh,
from
yes.
The Harwood Board.
Okay. We'll start in the room and then we'll go online. Jana, you want to start?
Okay. Hi, I'm Jana Osman and I represent Twinfield. Nice to meet you.
Jim Halzon, I represent Holland.
Corey Hackett, Waterbury. Harwood.
I'm Steph Olson, I take the notes for the board.
Jody Emerson, Superintendent Director.
Michelle Lehman, the business manager.
Alice Farrell from Barry Unified. Carl, we'll go to you. Are you there? Okay, Guy, introduce
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah, this is Guy Isabel. I'm the at-large member for BUUSD in Barry.
Terry,
Sorry about that. Terry Steele, I am the at-large member for Washington Central.
Lyman,
Lyman Castle, at-large member for Montpelier Roxbury.
Jason,
Jason Monaco, I'm up in Cabot.
Patrick,
Patrick Welly, I'm in Middlesex, Washington Central Unified.
Carl, are you with us?
Yep, Carl Madison, the Emergency Services 2 instructor for CVCC.
Very good.
Tim Hammond is here too,
Okay. Where is
online.
online? Tim?
Yes, I'm Tim Hammond. I'm the other exploratory tech teacher at CVCC. And I apologize for my camera. I don't want my meeting to drop, so I have it off.
And anyone else in the two others?
It was Stephanie and Orca.
Oh, okay, all right, so we're all set there. So here we are. So now, motion to approve the agenda as written. We have one, and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, we're good to go with this agenda. So we move forward to the consent agenda, which has two things on it: the approval of minutes from 11/18/24 and an action regarding a resignation.
I did not send that resignation because we didn't get that updated.
Okay, so the resignation is not on the consent agenda then?
No, well, I can share it with you.
Okay.
What do you need?
That we've received a resignation, can we state who it's from?
Yep, we received a resignation from our co-op coordinator, Wayne Tazi. It was dated January 1st, and so that's not a school day, it's not a work day. So we were clarifying with him whether or not he needed the January date for health insurance purposes.
Could you
Okay.
ask Guy to mute?
Yeah. Or, would it be the last workday in December?
Okay,
And we did not get feedback from him, I don't think.
okay,
So Michelle sent that, given that time that he gave us, she sent him an email.
okay. So should we wait to approve that till we get the date right?
I would just in
Would,
case.
okay, all right, so we'll,
Yeah.
we'll put the resignation on our consent agenda for next month. But, so in the meantime, all we have is the approval of minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Someone? Oh, we do, okay, I need a second for the consent agenda,
The minutes.
the minutes, yes. Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those in, okay. Anyone opposed to the consent agenda? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, board reports. Do we have, not tonight, we don't have a student representative to the board. We'll hold that in advance.
Can I ask one question on the
Sure.
resignation? If we're not gonna meet till January 9th or whatever that date
13th.
is, and his resignation is previous to that, does it matter?
Well, we can't post it until you've officially accepted it. You could put it in today, you know, and just accept it as a January 1st date, and then we could update the board later, I suppose.
I
It's,
mean, recognizing that January 1st is not a school day.
Day, right.
right. His last day of work will be December 20th, which is the last day of school this month.
Okay,
That's been official and decided. It's just working on whether we're doing the December, a different date in December or January 1st official date. But his last work day will be December 20th, Friday.
okay. But now, here's a question, if he dated his resignation as December 31st,
Yep.
because he could still be available if there was a question or anything to that date, would that make things easier? No?
No.
Okay. All right. So,
You can accept the resignation with the last working day of December 20th.
okay,
That's school vacation.
After
Right.
that, it's all vacation.
Okay.
So there will be no more school days.
Until the 2nd, is that when everybody goes back?
Yeah.
but does that affect his insurance coverage or anything?
You made it.
If
Hi.
if the individual has insurance coverage, we've had the discussion and
He
we'll
does.
work on that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't want that to, end abruptly,
Right.
whatever.
Right.
That was part of the discussion, but his last working day is the 20th of December
Okay,
with students.
all right, so, based on that, then, we probably should accept the resignation with the caveat of the date to be formalized. Okay, so let's do that. We'll just back up to 4.2 for a minute. The resignation of Wayne Tozzi. I need a motion to accept.
Motion?
All right, Jim, I need a second.
Second,
Who was that, please?
Patrick.
Patrick, thank you. Any discussion, just to clarify, we're gonna accept the resignation with, a formal date to be decided on or before January 1st, 2025. All right? Everybody understand that, what we're doing? All right,
Can I pause you, Alice?
sure.
Just want to note that Superintendent of the Harwood District, Mike Licklider, is here.
Oh,
And that we
welcome.
also have our 10th, we got everybody tonight, board meeting in the room. Scott, you get to sit next to Corey, our new member, and introduce yourself.
So we have a full board,
Yes.
yes.
Thank you
and-
all.
And a visitor,
And welcome, and thank you for hosting your meeting at Harwood.
yes.
And we have Peter Anthony online, I just noticed as well, so.
Oh.
Oh, great.
Mr. Anthony, welcome. All right, so back to the mission at hand. All in favor of accepting the resignation of Wayne Tozzi, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries, and Jody and Michelle, you'll keep us posted on that. Very good. All right, program presentation, exploratory?
Fantastic. So, Mr. Hammond, so Tim and I have a packet for you guys. Do you want to take over for
Yeah, I'll take over the notes.
So, we've got a couple of packets for you guys. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Going around this way. And the rest will go on down this way. Do we got, do you want me to, I'll also project it, or Jody, do you want, I'll project it? Let me pull that up.
Thank you.
Can I present?
You should be able to.
All right. So I am Steph Olson. We have Tim, who is my co-instructor here on the meeting as well, and we just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about our program. So we have 24 students. We've got 2 instructors. I'm responsible for teaching the math and science end of things. And Tim, do you want to talk a little bit about what you do?
Yes, I am responsible for our embedded and proficiencies around humanities, mainly literacy and social studies. But both of us take, I guess, different aspects of the transferable skills in workplace proficiencies and split those between our classes, our class content. However, we do work as a full class in terms of big projects, particularly around our program studies and community service and a lot of the collaboration that we do with other instructors at our school.
So, as I said, we have 24 students, 2 instructors. We have 2 classrooms, and then I've got a wood shop. We split our students 12 and 12. We call them blue group and orange group. And we split the day. Blue group starts with me, orange group starts with Tim, and then we go ahead and we flip-flop. So that way our students get equal time with us, and they're able to participate in labs and in anything we do. So I provided for you guys, we provided a copy of Mr. Hammond's syllabus and a copy of my syllabus for you guys to kind of take a look at. But what we wanted to talk a little bit about is how our class runs. It is a pretty interesting and really, really engaging style. So in the beginning of the year, our job is to take these 9th and 10th graders who either really think they may know what they want to do or have no clue what they want to do but want some kind of jump start in a career. And we get to explore all of the programs offered here. So the first 12 weeks, we are looking at all of the programs. I also provided a copy of my curriculum map. So we start off our year and we do a lot of team building. Our students, we need them to be a well-oiled machine to run throughout the year, to do our community service, for them to be able to work together in hands-on situations, because it is a fast-paced class. So being able to, set high expectations is really important. We go ahead and we take 1 week per program, and we get to do some really interesting things. We try and put some kind of collaboration in there between our students and that program students. For example, last week was our last program study, and we looked at welding. And Tim went ahead and took students down, blue and then orange, and they were taught by the welding students how to do some skills. What skills were they looking at last week, Tim?
So the way that Eric had set things up is he came down and had stations from MIG, TIG, stick, plasma cutter, acetylene torch, and had demonstrations along the way. Really, because our welding teacher is being mentored by one of our other teachers, our auto teacher. They really believe in showcasing what students have learned and then using them as a resource when we're doing these collaborations. Students really took advantage of that. They had a great time. That we even had some students second guessing what they are going to apply for the upcoming year based off of this collaboration. In addition, Olson and myself really take professionalism and safety seriously. All of our students go through OSHA 10 quarter 1 and safety in terms of PPE, etiquette, and being aware of your surroundings is something that we don't budge on. And that's our kind of a credo that we have at our school in general.
Absolutely. So yeah, we like to throw in some field trips as well. For example, during our plumbing and heating program, we learned a little bit about the functions of a water main. Our students had to utilize math, and they had to create blueprints of a water main based off of a little map we gave them, and then scale it back down in order to create this model of a water main using a PEX and PEX expansion tool. And then we went ahead and we went to the Berry City Water Treatment Plant, which we got a really awesome tour by the plant manager. And it was just so great for our kids to see what we were teaching them in class, and then to see it by an industry professional, and for them to be able to be like, oh, that is the sand filter, and I understand how it works. So our students get to scratch the surface, and it is really interesting to see our students come in and they change their mind about the fields they want to apply to, and it pushes them outside of their comfort zone, which is something that we've been talking a lot about, is that you've got to be able to be comfortable going out of that comfort zone and being able to look at failure and mistakes as a learning opportunity. So we get a lot of real good chances to work on those transferable skills to help our students be leaders in their following years. It's awesome to see during quarter awards and our end of the year celebration, our end of the year award ceremony, to see our expo students who accomplish so much as they go through our programs, and they're winning awards and scholarships, and they're hired on into industry, and what they think about and what they take from expo with them. It's pretty phenomenal. We have a lot of students come back and do a lot of reflecting about the work from day one in expo to them finishing at CVCC. So yeah, we provided a curriculum map. Again, we take 1 week per program, and we try to do some kind of hands-on learning with them as well. And it's a fast-paced program, which is great. So this week is an exciting week because after we take a look at our programs, our students are going to be starting to shadow. So what these guys get to do is they get to think about their professionalism that they've been learning about and take it out to our CVCC community and showcase what they can do. So they will spend time with that program from 9 until 12, and they will partake in and get to see what it's like to be a student in that program. That way they get to see the environment and the culture and being able to see the teaching style and to really work on their networking skills. And it's intimidating walking in as a 9th or 10th grader to a program by yourself. It's, again, pushing them out of their comfort zone. But students are really, really excited about this opportunity.
So you're really a springboard into the future.
Big time, yeah. It's really refreshing. Tim and I are constantly hearing from instructors who take our students, and they'll talk about wow, they understand tech ed, and they understand the expectations of tech ed. They also showcase and become leaders in their classroom. It's really, really cool to see. Do you agree with that, Tim?
Absolutely, and we try to create a sense of belonging at our school and in our classroom that lasts beyond a year to year. As Olson pointed out earlier, we do have a lot of students coming back to visit us, whether they're coming back from their job and signing in at the front office and visiting us on a day that they have a little bit of time, to walking through during open house or trades fair, and just recalling some of the times that we had, but more importantly, talking about how the transferable skills that we really drill in our class it's being manifested in the current career path that they're in. That these things that we talk about a lot aren't just things that we do to keep people in line. They're seeing how it's applicable when they're out there earning money and taking step towards doing what they want to do.
We have a couple of class mottos. We've had one for a really long time. We now have a new one. So our first one was expose a year-long interview, because they're working and showing that they want to be in tech ed, and they get watched by the other instructors all year long to see if they're ready to come into their programs. We've also this year adopted time and place, and we've really been talking a lot about what is time and place. And it's really kind of neat to see our students kind of make these two mottos their own, and to think about it back at their sending school, and to think about it as they apply. And we see that when we get to our community service piece later in the year. We've seen it in the past. It's really neat. So,
Stephanie,
yeah.
are you saying time and place?
Time and place.
Or time in place?
And place.
Okay.
Oh yeah, time and place is a big one. Anything else about program shadowing?
Oh, well, I'd like to comment on the time and place. The reason why that ended up being, it was kind of a motto that we adopted based off of creating, again, that sense of community in our classroom. After being with each other for 4 hours, 5 days a week, you get to know one another, and not everybody is friends in the classroom, but everybody respects one another, and everybody treats each other well, and they're tolerant of all of our differences. Because of that, people really come out of their shells. People who aren't talking much the first couple of weeks of school understand the way that Olson and I teach. They feel safe. And oftentimes we have to look at our classroom norms that we established first couple days of school to say, listen, we understand that we are comfortable with one another, but you have to look at it as the same way that the way that you speak to your parents, the way that you speak to your friends is going to be different from the way that you interact when you meet someone for the first time. And having those moments where we can, quote unquote, let our hair down and, have these team building exercises on a Friday afternoon. Also, we need to also be professional when we have a guest speaker in our class or when they're out shadowing, because we want to make them understand that, yes, wearing your true self on your sleeve is important, being authentic, but it also is important to not give someone the wrong idea, because if someone's meeting you for the first time, you're applying somewhere for the first time, and you're too familiar, it could end up, costing yourself an opportunity. So we definitely work hard to make sure that students understand that. And then the shadowing piece, again, with the pacing of the classroom, students sometimes get, I don't want to say lost, but they'll fall behind a little bit based off of keeping up with the academics that we have in our classroom, balancing that with being out and shadowing. So Olson and I also make a big effort to make sure that students understand that this is a time to show their time management skills and being on task in the classroom. So all that really translates to the workplace for sure.
Yep. We've got shop projects. I've got a wood shop. We're gonna do spoon carving and cutting boards. But in the latter end of the year too, after shadowing, we also, for my side, we talk a lot about safety. workplace safety, so so that they can go out into their programs and be safe, but also be safe industry professionals. That's really important. Do you want to talk about your shop at quick?
Sure. So in addition to our program studies and our shadowing, Olson and I have kind of like a long running curriculums. I read 2 books with the students with literacy curriculum attached to that. We read Into the Wild and the Freedom Writer's Diary as a class. And with that, we also do personal finance through Next Gen Personal Finance. And I also have a small shop in my classroom for leatherworking. Students learn to, use hand tools and how to create templates and do, shop safety, conservation of material, having a plan, measuring all those types of things that they're going to see in spades when they go on to their programs for next year.
Go
I'm
ahead.
just wondering if what you're doing in literacy or math is coded to Common Core standards?
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. Absolutely. All of the everything that we have is attached to rubrics that Jody has met with actually the full school to make sure that we're hitting proficiency specifically aligned with the state, and those rubrics are then used for assessment in our classes.
Thank you.
Absolutely. We wanted to share some of our, what our students think about Expo with you guys. So this morning, we had, we let them know that we were doing this presentation. But we had them do a little, little exercise where they reflected on this year so far. And remember, it's only, little bit into Q2. And we wanted to know a little bit about what Expo has done for them so far, and we put in 7 quotes for you along with some pictures of some of the work that we've done this year. But it was really interesting to see it's always interesting to see what students wrote about. We had a lot of students talk a little bit about how we've really pushed them outside their comfort zone, and they are starting to see the value in being outside your comfort zone, and how that's going to apply to them in everyday life. And I think that's really, really interesting. And some students talked about how they've also grown to be able to use their voice in front of people and find their voice and find their interests and their values. And it's really kind of cool to see, and to be able to think about their careers. And they really do understand this year how important that seat is to them, and they understand that we can only accept 24 students and how much of a great opportunity this is for them. So we just wanted to give that to you guys. Tim, do you want to say anything else about the quotes?
Yes. So oftentimes when we do an exercise like this, it's all individually based. There's the only thing that they receive is the prompt from us. This is something that because we want to capture what they're actually feeling. We tell them to, you're not going to hurt our feelings. If you feel like we could be doing something better, if you feel like there's something outstanding in terms of something that we're missing, we need to know this because that helps us grow as a program. So please be as honest as you can. And, I honestly was blown away about how many students, because this is just a small sample, wrote about how our program has given them confidence in themselves. And, you see a lot of teens coming through our program, and, they're young and they're youthful, and their effervescence kind of tricks you at sometimes because you're like, oh, they're always happy and they're excited to be here. But then when they start to open up, you do find out that they've had struggles in classrooms and they haven't felt like they've had a voice. And another thing that really was very meaningful this year was myself and Steph had gotten an email from a parent about one of their about their child, and how this year they've seen such a change that it brought them, to tears. They were emotional about it and they just thanked us. And that was really good to see. And, Olson and I are fairly fresh in our career as teachers. And you hear from veteran teachers like these things will come, and then you're like, maybe someday, maybe we'll. But when it does come, it just you realize why you do what you do.
Yep. That same parent, we had a parent-teacher conference, and I just want to share that that kid also came to this parent-teacher conference, and mom didn't make that student, but that student decided on their own to come to the conference, and was voicing, was conversing about education so far at CVCC. And mom let us know a little secret and said, I just want you to know that this student really, we struggled getting this student to go to school. And she said, she goes, the student's not going to tell you this, but they haven't missed a day this year. And that's still continuing. That student hasn't missed a day. And before Mr. Hammond and I could even say something, the student popped in and said, well, it's actually because I'm learning things and I actually like school. And honestly, I think that is a common thread between every program at CVCC. I do believe what we're doing is really important to these kids.
What's your breakdown of girls and boys?
It's about half and half.
Yes, and we've worked actually hard to get to that point. So before Olson and I were co-teachers, Olson was a long-term sub before I took the job. And my first year, I had 2 females out of, although we only had 14 students, I think, that year, but we had 12 male students, only 2 female students. And I think because of I don't know why, but in the past couple of years we've gotten about 50-50, and I want to say that either is it this year or was it last year that actually there were more female students than male students. And I haven't really thought about that demographic until you just brought it up, but I'm kind of reflecting on when I first started and how making sure that there I believe that some students were a little bit intimidated to come to the class at first because they didn't know what to expect. And I'm sure having Olson in the classroom too has helped kind of make that a balanced classroom.
Yeah. It's Guy, did you have a question?
Yeah, a couple of questions and a comment. So, TO, I have 2 questions. And I haven't, I'm trying to remember the last time I referred to Stephanie as Olson, but I love it. So, I want to commend to both of you for, increasing the numbers in this program. So the 2 questions I have, and I'll start with the negative piece, is at the end of the day, what is the number one reason that kids say, you know what, you guys are great, but this sucks and I'm not going to do it anymore? And the question number 2 is, you guys are so great and I'm going to continue. And so what is the number one reason for either one of those?
Can you repeat the first question?
Yeah, you guys are great, but this really stinks. I can't do it anymore, and I'm not gonna apply.
I don't think so. We rarely have students who, I don't think in our,
We've never had a student not apply to a program, and I think we have one of the highest. I don't want to say recidivism, but like we have most of our students coming back and clamoring to come back. Generally, the reasoning why students don't come back to our school is due to just needing another year to grow. Last year we had, in the year before, we had a couple students, mainly freshmen, and there were things that were either outside of our classroom at their sending school or during interactions with other staff members or other students outside of our class that has caused an issue where we feel the maturity to be in a program that requires a lot of attentiveness, just wasn't the best fit for the following year. And I can tell you that all, I think this, from the year before, all the students who didn't come back for that year after Expo are currently at our school. So they just did their year at their sending school. And instead of looking at it in terms of, CVCC didn't support me, I don't want to be here again, they said, okay, I have a carrot. I'm going to do what I need to do. Make sure my attendance is good, make sure my grades are good, reapply, and get to where I want to be. And currently, they're all doing very well in program.
Yeah. And other staff members are seeing that as well, which is really cool.
So that, I guess that's why my follow-up question is, so we're obviously turning away a number of students. And so are kids coming to you and saying, what I need to do, how come I can't get in, blah, 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 blah.
Well, oftentimes those students who are those missed opportunities, I wouldn't say that all of them do that. A lot of them do. A lot of them reach out because we are looking for students who are looking at our school as an opportunity to find a career that they're interested in and not an alternative to gen ed. We really try to make sure that they're here for the right reasons. Now, students who, aren't here because the numbers were too high, always reapply. And then some students, it's out of our hands. I mean, we've had times where we've accepted students conditionally and something happens over the summer. Something happens in the last 3 weeks of school at their sending school. And it's so egregious that we have no choice but to tell them that they cannot come to our school. And that's only happened a handful of times, but there's so many possibilities of why they're not here. But I would say that it's kind of a mixed bag in terms of them reaching out and reflecting. Because a student who does something like that writes us a letter, sends us an email, sets up a conference, asks it. That's the type of student we want. If student doesn't, if they had a lot of absences, we want to know, why did you have those absences? If student has low, if they're not proficient, sometimes it's simple as, I didn't like the teacher in that class. That we don't look for straight A, or students who are achieving 4s across the board, who never miss a day, and they are, in every extracurricular. We're looking for students who are looking for an alternative, but for an alternative for the right reasons.
With the understanding that we do academics still, it's Expo's a fast-paced program. And that's something that it's important to get to our students to understand. It's a fast-paced program. The expectations are high because expectations have to be high in CTE because it's a safety issue. And we're sending them out with our names, with CVCC's names, to be industry professionals.
Absolutely. And I will say that admin and the admissions team has been fantastic for the last couple of years with sending that message out to sending schools. We don't want to trick anybody. We don't want them to think that they're coming to our school and that we are in the wood shop, in the leather shop, and we're out doing cool field trips every day, and they're never going to read a book and they're never going to do math problems, because that's not the case. That's not what we're doing. We want to make sure that they understand that you may be learning these things in a different way than you're used to, but these things are still important. Reading, the writing, and the STEM is all very, very important. And in addition, we do have some great support staff that have come on board this year that have been really helpful in that as well. So honestly, this is my 7th year, and I feel like our school is the strongest that it's ever been.
Absolutely. And you see it with the community building too. It's pretty cool to see CVCC's community, I believe, really coming together. But yeah, so yeah, good stuff. But we do end our year with a couple things that we wanted to kind of share. We have students do an independent project because we've talked with them, like, as the quarters go along, Hammond and I take a step a little bit back because they need to learn some independence for the following year. So we did include some of these projects where students have to budget. They're on a very strict timeline that they create. And they pull off some really beautiful projects. We had a couple students last year make some cornhole boards. We had a student who, this student went into cosmetology this year. She made this leather barbering carrying case because she wanted to utilize that in her career. We thought that was really, really cool. We had another student who's interested in forensic psychology, who's again going through the EMS program, do kind of a report on a psychology cases. We had a student who's in building trades who made this really beautiful leather tool belt, which is, I mean, this is quality stuff, guys. This is pretty cool. Student made an Adirondack chair, and this is all this individual learning and research that they have been working towards that they can carry into the following year.
What is that?
Good question. This one is a boot holder. So this student was interested in a little bit of welding, so they had to weld the frame, and they welded the horse shoes together. Has a horse, so went ahead and made a boot rack.
Competes.
Mm-hmm. Competes, yes. So we've got some great stuff, but something that we wanted to kind of talk with you guys about is kind of our community service piece. We have some really great projects that we do. We work with the Barry Cow Pasture Stewardship Committee in Barry, and we've been working with them. This will be year 4. And this is a process. The committee has to vote and approve for us to come on board each year. To do this project, we have to show them a little bit about our the learning that goes behind this. And our students get to go onto the Barry Cow Pasture and be able to help control invasive species by pulling invasives. They've done it, the 2 days, we schedule in 2 work days, but we've had the committee and students agree that they want to go for a 3rd day, which is really cool. But the committee does come out and they get to talk with our students, so it's a great chance for our students to network. And it's a great learning opportunity for these guys. We do that in the spring. Last year we also worked with the Central Vermont Humane Society and did some beautification around there. The coolest thing about this was we've been trying for a really long time to get to work with, the Humane Society, and I haven't had any luck. So what we put it out to our students is, if you guys have a community service project in mind, go ahead, do the legwork. We had a student who was able to set this up, and Humane Society loved it so much that they want to make this a continuous, an annual project. So that was really cool to see that student do all the emails, include us, and we're talking like professional emails, and being able to work with Tim and I, and be able to look at our schedules, and when can we do this, and let's make a rain date just in case. And it was a great opportunity for our students to be able to get to see that as well. We have done annually Green Up Day. This past year, the past couple years, we've done Green Up in Montpelier and in Barry, and that's hard work. That is hard work. We would love to be able to go out into more of our sending school communities. Like, for example, if we came to Waterbury, I don't live in Waterbury. Tim doesn't live in Waterbury. We've asked students where would be a great place for us to do Green Up, but we would love to ask you guys, like, if you know any areas that need Green Up in the spring, we would like to serve more than just Barry and Montpelier. It would be great if we did Barry and Waterbury, or Barry and Cabot, or Barry in the Twinfield area. Like, that would be really, in Plainfield. that would be really awesome if you guys knew of any places that need that. It would be awesome for our kids to be able to do those community service areas in our sending regions.
Steph, and we also did the park in Montpelier after the flood. Yeah, we got those I think soccer goals out,
Oh, yeah,
and that was quite a day.
They were determined to get that goalpost out of the ground. But yeah, that's that picture right here. We also have in the past, and we haven't been able to make that connection again, but I think it was our first year we were able to connect with Berry Gardens and be able to work with their facilities manager, and we did beautification for 2 days there. Unfortunately, it sounds like their facilities manager had moved on, and when I've tried to reach out, I was not able to make that connection, because bringing 24 students on a community service project can be really hard and overwhelming. But we would love, again, if you guys have any connections out there that you think would be a great spot for CVCC to do some work, that's something that we would love to do.
So
Go
I
ahead.
think it would be, behoove us all to speak to our boards about what they see as a need being in the community and who the connectors are.
That would be great.
Yep.
That would be great.
You know, there may be things happening through the mentoring program. I mean, there are so many avenues. I mean, in Plainfield particularly, because of the devastation, we're still building.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So anything you guys can think of, again, we really welcome it, because it's a really good chance for our students to continue working on their professional skills.
Great. Thank you.
Guy, you have a question?
Yeah, one last question. So Tim mentioned that the both of you are still fairly young teachers. So what is the highest compliment you've been paid thus far as teachers?
So the highest compliment is that my student, my child, enjoys coming to school, and they feel safe. That never gets old, and we've heard that time and time again. And to be honest with you, when I first started teaching, I had a few mentor teachers at Burlington High School, and a few mentors that no longer are at CVCC. And I understand that in education, particularly when people are in it for decades, people can become jaded a little bit. And the message, not from everybody, but from time to time, and sometimes the bad sticks out, is that you have these good and bad years. Sometimes you're going to have these students who do these things, and it's going to make you think about your teaching in a way that you might want to change professions. And I remember my first year, I got so worked up about students on plans that I was almost waiting, anticipating for something extreme to happen, and it never came. And then my first year working with staff, it was so eye-opening to making a program more robust. And I'm like, okay, we're getting lucky. We're getting lucky. We're getting lucky. Well, I'm in my 7th year of being lucky. I'm starting to realize that we're doing something right. And just hearing that from a parent and hearing it from a student is really the best compliment that I've received.
Yeah, and to mirror that, 2 things that stick in my mind is last year we had a student who wrote a speech for the award ceremony, and it was, I think she might have been trying to make us cry, but it was really, really powerful to hear this student's remarks about how our teaching style and our program made this student not only have the courage to go into, want to go into an industry that is male dominated, but to push herself. And I think that was, again, you know, she's trying to make us cry, but it was genuine comments that were really awesome. And also, you know, during our tech meetings, when we meet with the state, we have a lot of expo teachers starting to look at our program and ask for our curriculum map and ask for advice about collaborations and ask about, well, how do you guys do this? And I think that's really telling that, you know, the AOE will tell new tech teachers, hey, reach out to Tim Hammond and Steph Olson. So I think, like Tim said, we're doing something right.
And that doing thing right is not just within something that Olson and I do a big part of that lifting, but it's a collaborative share. It's collaborative. It's not just us. It's the teams that we work with, the other teachers willing to work with us, administration willing to hear us out when we have new ideas around our program. And having the ability to have those conversations and make our program, you know, everything that we hope it could be, or that it will be in the future, is just it's great to have that support all around for sure.
And yeah, and it makes us want to continue, you know, to share with the board, you know, Tim and I are going to be looking into doing our masters together so that we can directly influence and take classes that directly influence what we teach. We want to be able to take classes that we can pull in, you know, woodworking classes, welding classes, to bring into and directly affect our curriculum. So that really fuels us as educators.
Very good. Any additional questions or comments? Well, we certainly do thank you. I mean, it's always exciting to hear what's going on in Expo.
We do a lot.
Yeah.
I love the passion. It's the kids have passion, the teachers have passion.
Yeah.
It's great. Thank
It's important.
you.
It's
Yeah,
important. You know, again, like Tim said, it's a team effort.
And there's such vibrancy. Thank you, thank you.
No worries. Thank you guys.
Very good.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes.
Thank you.
All righty. So, well, moving forward, boy, it's, you almost wanted to stop there because we're good. We're good, yes.
End on a good note.
Yes. So we will continue. Going forward with committee reports, facilities, who's the lucky winner with facilities? Terry, are you?
Terry, and I think, Terry, when you need me to, I'll share the screen.
Yeah, so let's start with that, Jody, I think. So Jody put together a presentation, which I think we can just use it to lead us through the conversation. So it's just an update of where we are today. And did you get my note about?
Yes, I fixed it. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
There's also paper copies if anyone wants them. That's here.
Anybody?
Yeah.
So we, just to remind you, and I'll let Terry kind of follow up in each piece of this, but we did some initial property test fits in Berlin and U32. Those are included in this. We have a timeline with the November 2025 bond vote for the project and projected costs of that. Like, there's significant amount that gets paid in this current fiscal year. And then also a timeline for the March, if we were to choose March 2026 as a bond vote time instead, and how the costs shift for that. There's a block diagram for the new facility, kind of thinking about where programs should be in relation to one another. And then there's a test fit on the Berrytown property that we are currently looking at, and we'll be discussing later tonight. And also a test fit for the Spalding CVCC current location, which was a request from one of the Berry school board members that we look at, and also part of what we thought as a committee was due diligence in this process. So we did initially have a look at an airport road site in Berlin, and you'll see that the red is all zone that we can't build in because of wetlands. So we discarded that. We did look at the fit on the U32 site, and their board I don't think has had the opportunity, Patrick, I'm like looking around the room and you're on the screen, to really talk about this yet, and it looks like I'm not gonna be there for a budget presentation until January 8th. So there's no movement on this. Some of the concerns were whether or not we want to be co-located or if we need our own identity, and also the inability to expand on that site once the building was built. Any future expansion would be difficult. You can see that if we were continuing forward with our November 2025 bond vote timeline, that we are in the site selection stage. We're firmly in that still, and we should be finished up with that next month. And then concept design can start. There's actually been some overlap, but that's why we have a block diagram, so some of the concept design has started. And in the future, the end of this fiscal year into next fiscal year would be community outreach, that bond vote, and then moving forward with the project.
We're kind of right on the money. Well, right on
Right
time
now,
anyway,
yep.
yeah.
Yeah, we do have, we have a discussion tonight, and then we have a meeting with the AOE next week on Monday, some of us, because what we realized in our facilities meeting last week was that the Agency of Education hasn't been through a building construction with a new purchase of property in a long time, and so all the people that are there now haven't done it. And so we want to make sure that everybody knows what to do and that we're doing it right. So whatever decisions we make tonight or in the future, we will have that kind of backup or pending that discussion to make sure we haven't missed a step. So you can see the, if we were to change the March one, mostly for budgeting purposes, for looking at this fiscal year's budget, if we're concerned about how tight it is and the lack of flexibility that we have, we would look out at the March 2026 bond vote idea, and that extends so that we have through April. That also gives us the opportunity to really look at a piece of property and make sure that there's no wetlands there, for example. And it shortens our community outreach a bit, extends it into the next year. And so obviously this balances those costs out. Instead of them all mostly being in this current fiscal year, it would split them between this year and next year. This is the block diagram. You can see that the majority of programs wanted access to the outside, and so that's why most of them are on the first floor, and then there are a few programs on the second floor. What I think is interesting about this is where you can see some of our future planning ideas. I'm just going to come up here, which may or may not help the people on screen. I think there's a little bit of shifting that still needs to happen because this is our first draft. Because of auto, there's a thought that maybe in the potential future we would expand and have some other diesel, whatever. And so that might be a group on its own, so that would probably flip its location here. So these are kind of the heavy trades together. They have access to outside, and we would have a space where like building trades could build a double wide or a tiny home outside or inside, those options taking place. Health sciences would be together in kind of a chunk, but the EMS programs would be in the downstairs so that their ambulance could go in and out, and they could practice with that a little bit differently. And medical professions would be in the upstairs. The other upstairs I think is exploratory. It's hard to read on this. And our foundations, which was an earlier program, and some flex labs that could be used for adult programming and or any other classes that need it. So we could also use those for academic programming, along with the classrooms that every single program would have in their space. So
Is there an auditorium?
there isn't an auditorium in this, but what we would use for an auditorium is right here. And this is where I should have added, Terry, some of those pictures from the site visits, but basically you see these stairs that would go to the second floor.
Yeah.
They would be in a set up in a way that you could seat all of your students on them, and that there would be a drop-down screen. So it's like this big open
Nice.
area for
Yep.
students to be.
We saw it, it was really cool.
It's
at a place.
phenomenal. Where
It's
was
really
that?
cool.
Sanford.
Yes, it was really
Sanford.
cool.
So I'll maybe search and see if I can find that photo. There's not really the same thing here that I've seen. U32 has a little bit of a amphitheater type of
Right.
situation in going into their middle school. It's not quite as big as what this would be. So that would open that up, and it has the cafeteria across from it, so you could use that entire space if you needed to. And I think the design was the library would be under those stairs. So those are some of the concepts that they're thinking about for this. And so then to go back to the, whoops, wrong computer, the test fit. This is the Berrytown property that we'll be talking about in executive session later, and how the building, there actually were, Terry, some class 2 wetlands there, and Guy, so that's what this little zone is. I'm not sure, yes, you can see it, so that what this zone looks like here. And so the building was originally looking like this, and now it's flopped a little bit to the side. This property has 3 access points to the street. So 3 existing roads that we can build through. And then the test fit, this was the initial based on the looking at the Google map image. So they tried to fit, how does this look with our needs over top? And you can see that it expands the building out. And when we got the actual site plans for the current project that's being done that took away our student parking lot, they realized that there's a culvert here and that this would be so tight that we couldn't actually fit in here, but they had thought this could be a yard. And this is in response to the BUUSD board member who was like, what if we built a parking garage over here, and we bought the property that's a garage across the street from Spalding, and we put some programs there, and then we did just this big campus. And so, looks funky. Oh, that's the second floor. So when they actually took the site plans from the current project, the stormwater treatment project, it doesn't quite fit. So there would have to be some different work done for that to happen. And as part of that, it's important to note that it's in a floodplain, so we have to figure that piece out. There might be additional stormwater work that needs to be done, and the cost of renovating the existing part of the building that we're in and then adding these 2 new pieces might not actually save us money as far as building. Did I miss anything, Terry?
No, I don't think so. You know, there's also, if we do stay and add on to that building, there's a lot of conversation that needs to take place. Who owns the building? Are we still tenants? You know, all that kind of conversation. So I think it's a little more complex, but not that it's not doable. Go ahead, Lyman.
With the add-on, that issue of who owns the building brings us back to this idea that if we don't own the building, we can't do any of the upgrades, right?
Or we can, but they aren't ours, right? Like we're already doing some of that. We're
But
renovating.
I think we're not allowed to use any of our grant money for it, I believe, right?
Right. I think so.
Well, I think it said it had to be owned by a school, so it's questionable.
Oh,
That's
it's different than, say, the bakery.
Has to be owned by a school versus if we're renting from a private owner.
Yeah. So in our meeting last week, we came up with a recommendation for the board. We have received additional information since that meeting. And we need to have some conversation in executive session later in this meeting before we give you that recommendation. Any other questions? Patrick?
Yeah, I'm curious about the Berrytown. property, what you mentioned that, is that close to the floodplain? Is that way up a hill? Where is that? And how does that relate to you said there's wetlands there, but it's not a concern because you've moved the plan off to the east, is that right?
Well, we're not, so we had to do a very minimal wetlands
Okay.
because we ran out of time, right? There's snow on the ground. So there's a lot of stuff that they couldn't do. But we wanted to get their initial, I guess, thoughts. It is not in a floodplain. It is way up.
Right.
Yeah. So and we'll discuss that property more.
Okay.
Later.
Any other additional questions or comments for the committee? Guy?
Yeah, I just want to commend Terry and Jody for working on this project. And what I want to mention is, as someone who, when I first heard the possibility of moving off campus, I was a little disappointed. And then when I started to see what the possibilities were, I grew very enchanted with the possibilities, number one. And number two is, my mantra as a board member has been, we cannot continue to turn away 100 to 200 students away from from this career center. And I think we as a board need to, embrace that. We had a exploratory, presentation tonight where they're getting kids jacked up and they're not turning kids away. But some kids are getting turned away, and at some point they're going to get discouraged. So I'm excited about what's happening.
Alrighty. Any other questions, comments for facilities? All right. Well, thank you very much. We'll continue that as needed. Negotiations committee, anything?
I think just the executive session later.
Okay. Program quality.
Well, I just thought maybe Lyman had the actual count. We went through the evaluation and we identified which of the questions belonged to the board and the staff, which one belonged to the staff, which one just belonged to the board. So we have a count, and now we're gonna work on putting it out there. Anything else?
Yeah, so just especially for people that didn't go through this process last time. So we have a superintendent evaluation. Last year it was unclear with faculty and staff and admin and board who was at answering the questions and what they knew and were they appropriate questions. So we've split it into 2 different evaluations. The board will do one, and then all of the staff will do the other one. And as Jana said, we focus the questions in the correct surveys, and so hopefully we'll get some better information this time. So we'll have that ready for the January meeting.
Very good. Superintendent's report.
Short and sweet, but I did, before I do that, I did find a picture of the Sanford stairs. So let me...
Oh, that sounds very fancy, the Sanford stairs.
Right? You probably saw it in the
Facebook.
maybe on Facebook, but also in one of my presentations or reports last year. So this is, they had stairs here, and then the cafeteria is actually to the left here. But it's big enough that on the side there's stairs that you could actually walk up without having to take the monster steps. But then along it, there's opportunity for people to sit and observe, and there's a drop-down screen in front of it, and you can project things.
Nice.
I like how you're nodding. You've seen something similar, right, Mike?
We built this at my last school.
Perfect. I need
Great
pictures
idea.
from your last school. So I just wanted to share that really quick since I found that.
That's great.
Anything
think-
further?
We had quarter awards, so you see the quarter awards winners in there. And honestly, I wrote this one so long ago, I'm not remembering.
Open house.
What?
Open
house.
house.
Oh, yeah. And I shared with you, open house was
Right.
phenomenal. It's always my favorite.
Your favorite.
My favorite evening at CVCC. And we had over 525 folks there. And I think we would have had more if they could have found parking. Honestly, like we had to move people because they were parked so that people couldn't get out. And it was raining. And so those two things maybe contributed to not having 625. I don't know, but it was wonderful, and everybody had such a great time, and the energy was phenomenal. So,
All right, very good, thank you. Business managers report.
Awesome. So I gave a current financial update. Oh. Okay. No.
it was Guy.
Oh,
So as you know, we had an AOE monitoring visit. Guy?
Well, just a quick follow-up. In today's newsletter, I just wanted to commend Capital Steel and the Times-Argus for donating, pieces to the Career Center. I think that's really important. I think it goes unnoticed a lot of times, and so I really appreciate their donations.
Yeah, that was the instructor, the welding instructor, made sure to come by my office to make sure we gave a shout out to Capital Steel in Montpelier. And so I was like, just write something up. So we did it
You
together.
did the form for a donation too, right?
I don't know.
We'll make sure we do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we had an AOE monitoring event. Oh man, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now. I don't have any updates from that. I expect a report by the end of the week, I think, possibly.
End of the week, early next week.
Early next week. I will share as I know more. It is required that I fill out a financial management questionnaire, and I shared that with you all. I am going to give that to the board chair so she can review and just a signature. You just need to go over it. It's required that you guys review it within 2 months. If you've reviewed it already, if you have any questions, please let me know. Or we can also make sure it's on the topic next month or the month after, and any questions. The only thing that had changed that I made note of is we did have the treasurer, the board treasurer changed because the Barry City Clerk treasurer is no longer there. So last year, March of last year, or this year, we elected Ashley Young. So that's the only thing I made note of, is the signature on our checks changed within the past 12 months. Other than that, same staffing, finance system, and so on. I gave you a copy of our current ledger. We're utilizing our grants fairly well. Our general fund, we are utilizing that. Yeah, it's a little smaller than I'd like to be at this time of year. Again, I think that comes from being fully staffed. We didn't have too much flexibility in our budget this year, and it's a very stressful thing, but we're doing well. And I'm trying to go a little bit faster on all these things because we have a lot to discuss in the budget. We had given our first draft, and I told you level services would be at least 9%. Looking like level services is actually more like between 10 and 11%. So rather than giving options of all the way upwards of 15%, I just did it in single percent increments. So I gave you an option of level services, which would equate to just below 11%. I gave you a 12%, and I gave you just over 13%. I will go over those in more detail. I have a presentation. Actually, I think Jody and I are going to do kind of together. This is a presentation. We've revamped it.
This is what you were looking at just barely though.
Oh, yep. Is it before my?
No, I just.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. Just barely, but we'll go over it a little bit more when I talk to you about the budget presentation. We can go into details and kind of what those budgets include or don't include.
Okay.
So this budget presentation,
Are you ready to move into the budget presentation?
anybody?
Because we could just flip right into that if you would like to.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
So Jody every year has been trying to make her way to our sitting school boards and giving a budget presentation. This year we revamped it a little. I was sick of seeing the same one for 3 or 4 years now.
They had new student photos every year.
It did. It was updated. It was, but I thought we'd, give it a little makeover. I have to credit someone else for that. I did not do that. And so I wanted to give you guys, Jody and I together, give you a presentation of what your boards will be getting as presentations. It's a little bit different. I've included a little bit different wording and a little bit more graphs and a little bit more stuff, but I really wanted to kind of, for the new board members, for people that are watching this and aren't going to be watching the other school boards, give it just a general overview of how we prepare for our budget, what's in our budget, that sort of thing.
So I get to start this tour tomorrow with Jana at Twinfield.
Right.
And then I have Harwood and Montpelier on the same night. It's a Wednesday coming up. Barry is Thursday the 19th, so you guys are the 18th, I think. So Montpelier and Harwood on the 18th, Barry on the 19th, Cabot on the 17th, busy week that week, next week. And then Washington Central on the 8th of January. I think that gets us through all. Be a whirlwind tour. So we do keep in front of everybody reminding the mission of the school district and the goals that you set, not this year, but the previous year, our long-term planning, which is that facilities one that we were talking about just now, the educational quality goal of equitable, safe, and rigorous programs, strengthening inclusive curriculum, instruction, and assessments across the center, and then the community engagement goal, which I feel like we've had the best engagement at this meeting so far. So Harwood is our lucky charm, or the weather, I'm not sure which it is, but we'll take it all. This charge is actually from last year's board. So those of you that were here last year on the board remember that. You've charged me with developing and implementing a full-day educational program that integrates academic coursework beyond the embedded credits and proficiencies with CTE programming by FY29. I think it's actually FY30, but fall of 29. Increasing student access to and enrollment in CTE courses, which we've talked about a little bit already. Guy has been highlighting that for us. And enhancing student preparedness for entering the workforce. I don't believe, based on our discussions this year, that charge has changed at all. So I think it makes sense to keep it. And the shout out goes to Anna Ryan, my admin assistant, for updating this presentation. Our why is still the same, addressing the issue of the number of applicants versus the number of students we can accept, improving academic access for students who currently struggle with attending and thriving outside of ours. And we've heard anecdotes in the past of students not returning to their sending school to complete their academics there, or just not engaging in the same way that they engage with us, and trying to figure out a way to kind of circle around them and support them better. And then also creating a more efficient and effective and enriching educational experience for students, leading to that preparedness that Stephanie and Tim were talking about in their presentation for the workforce. And we collect every 2 years data about how our students are doing as far as the CLNA, the Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment, from industries that have hired our kids, but we also collect it every year from our co-op partners. We've included the CVCC mission statement, very similar to the district statement.
just around supporting those things that we value and getting kids ready and all those things, future opportunities. And then this budget development is still the same, the way that we go about it. We're trying to year round be thinking about what are the needs, and some changes from the AOE have actually impacted this a little bit, because now if I want to open a program for next school year, I have to have applied by September 15th to the AOE and basically put forth, this is the program we want to open. Here's why, here's the evidence for it. Here's what the curriculum is going to look like. Here's the credits or credentials that will be for that. If we want a substantive change to a program, we have to submit that request by November 15th in the school year
Is this
prior
going
to.
forward? Going forward.
This is true this current year.
Oh,
So basically I think I've shared it with this board a couple of times, had developed a future planning draft of how do we build up to that new center. And so I had put in for humanities and foundations potentially for next year. And basically I'm just gonna put in anything that we might think we want so that we've at least applied for it. And then if we don't do it, I think that's fine. But if we try to do something after the fact, it won't happen. So last month we had a change in MedPro that we accepted as a board, to shift from the 2 courses that she was teaching, human biology, and there was an intro to something. No, she's
Physiology.
physiology. Thank you. To anatomy and physiology. So it went from 6 credits to 8 credits for next year. So I was able to get that in by the November 15th deadline, and we've already gotten approval for that. I also put in a just in case change for EMS2 to see if we can't do anything about the paramedicine with BTSU, to change it to advanced EMT instead. And that's been approved if we choose to make that shift. So it's sort of like guessing what we might need and just putting in the application just in case, with the ability to say, oh, actually, we're not going to be doing that, instead of being able to apply now or later and to start up a program. I understand why, but
There are no downsides to applying for.
there haven't been yet, but this is the first year. So I might hear from the AOE, stop applying for things you're not actually doing, but I think I've been very upfront and open with them, and we have communication that says, I'm gonna throw these in here because when we're thinking about the budget timeline, it's really hard to predict where we're gonna be. And so, other than the MedPro substantive change that we agreed on, none of these are necessarily happening for next year.
Yeah.
But we have it's been done so that just in case. So those are things that we're now having to think about a little earlier than we had to before, as we work through what are the actual costs of things, what are some things we didn't expect and anticipate, and then what do we need to do? What are some things that we're going to need for the future? Michelle, something else here? No.
what's hard about that is we don't even know how many students we'll have yet at
Right.
that point.
Yeah, it's a full another month
That's
before
a
I
whole
can get
other, right.
Right.
even an estimate, right?
It's not easy. We're all doing the best we can.
Yeah.
So we ask you to create parameters, and again, this is kind of the chart that I was given previous in the last budget cycle of, let's keep working towards that new center. Let's explore opportunities for collaboration across our sending schools and support this work, and consider configuration changes that realize program quality improvements that can serve more students, which is kind of our ongoing discussion as we look at applications coming in, as we look at the program analysis, as we look at the information we get from the comprehensive local needs assessment. And as I talk with superintendents monthly and then with principals, last year we tried monthly, it didn't work. So we're trying quarterly this year, and I'll be meeting with them tomorrow, actually, the Sunday school principals. So in last month, you asked us to bring back 11 13 and 15% increases. Michelle's already talked about that we're bringing back a little bit less increases than that. A lot of our presentation and decisions here for tonight resulted from that base education rate going down, that 3% decrease, the impact that would have on our sending schools direct bill tuition, and so their budgets.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest, things that I'm seeing here is, of course, even, that's the big change when we were talking about level services, last month, we were talking about, 9% or something. But when the base education rate went down, which we haven't seen in years, it kind of threw everything for a loop. So now it looks like level services for us is more on average with what other schools are seeing. It's about almost 11%. Some of and of course we're now getting in some of those numbers we were waiting on. One is that base education rate. Last month we had insurance rates finalized. Liability insurances aren't finalized yet, but we have a good projection of those numbers, and of course everything's just increasing.
Michelle, what's base education rate? I feel like I should know that, and that
You should.
I'm a little embarrassed.
You should. So last month, were you with us last month? So I went over.
Virtually.
Yeah. So last month when we're looking at our tuition, the state sets the base education tuition rate.
Okay.
So how that is based off a consumer price index that you can never find the number, and it's a percentage of that. And anyway, that base education rate says what the minimum rate or what you should be spending on your students. Of that, what pertains to us is we get a grant, 2 grants actually. One is based off 87% of that. So whatever 87% of that number is, we get on the sending school's behalf on theirs. So if a school owes us for 10 students, rather than the money going to them, it comes directly to us. We also have another grant that's based off 35% of that base education rate. So those are our 2 biggest grants. And you'll see way later on in the presentation, but because of the size of those grants and because of the amount it's based off the students, because those revenues have gone down, we now need to charge more for tuition in order to get the same amount back. I was talking with Jody, I think I got the numbers on Tuesday or Wednesday or something, and I was talking with her and I was like, I'm holding off as long as I can to do this because I don't want to project. If I had to project, I'd say an increase of 3%. That's safe. I would have never in a million years thought it was going down 3%. And business managers are reaching out to the AOE, reaching out to everybody that we could talk to and say, what is going on? How are we going to fix this? What are we going to do? Kind of thing. In the past 7 years that I have record of and on here, it has never gone down, nor has it ever been adjusted. They've always just kept whatever that actual formula was. They've never adjusted it. Well, they could, like the legislator could adjust that.
And it's not the kind of thing that they give like the first version of it and then the second and then the third. It's just.
This is it. What we see is what we get. This is gonna affect not just
Everybody.
us, everybody.
Everybody.
And schools, and as bad as it was last year, it's gonna be harder this year.
Yes.
So this is the sheet, a version of the sheet that you shared at the last one. So this used to be 13,000.
13 and something. Yeah.
13 and something. So 87% of that means that $11,021 per our 6 semester average of FTEs, not our actuals, is what comes to us on behalf of our sending schools. And then we plug in all of these other pieces of it for this. Thank goodness this spreadsheet was left to us from people before us. But we put in how many tuition students we have, adult tuition students, which is separate from our student FTE numbers. Then we have this grant and the state tuition reduction. And then we have the salary assistance that we get reimbursed a percentage of those salaries. And that's of the actual salary.
Actual, so I have a little bit of concern there as well, because if we not filling the co-op coordinator role in a timely manner will result in us losing a little bit of salary assistance. It's 35% of salary and benefits, but it's based off actuals. So moving forward, we're not going to see it this year, but next year we may see if there's a 6-week lag, if there's a 3-month lag, if we can't bill for the remainder of the year, it will affect us in the following year of how much money we actually get.
Wow. And then if we have in previous years, we've had like a tuition offset that we took money that we had left over. And we would offset that, which is something a year or two ago, the board decided, let's not do that. That's not really helpful to folks and to us moving forward. Any anticipated business revenue and the total like Perkins and all of that is for the other revenues, right?
Yes.
And then we have the amount to be raised remaining from our total tuition, the number of FTEs. So we anticipate next year we'll be able to say that we have 194 as our 6-semester average. This current year is 184. And then that brings us to the sending school amount, which in this one, which is the level.
I'm not sure what your total number. I was playing around with that one for so long.
5-1. Is that the level 1 or is that a
5103? That's level.
Yep. So this level services one leads to a 29% increase in the tuition billed directly to our sending schools.
But if you go down and over just a smidge, you can see that our tuition only increased, not only, I mean, that's still a large number, 9.7%. But because that base education rate has gone down so much, the school is responsible for paying us the difference. And so it increases their tuition, what they will see on their tuition amount by almost 30%, 29%. So to us, if our tuition, doesn't matter how we get our tuition money, our tuition is set at our tuition, like that's kind of how it works. It's just going to be more, their bills are going to be higher because less is going to be sent on their behalf to us.
So if Mike's district's 6-semester average is 30 students, it's 30 students at this higher rate than what they've had to pay in that much higher rate.
So, I mean, it's a little bit of a sticker shock. So that's one reason why I chose not to offer other alternatives. I think being responsible, we really needed to look at that number.
Does that help, Scott, with your question?
I mean, it helps answer the
Helps or
question.
does it make it a little more confusing? Yeah. So if you want to go to the next slide, the budget facts, a couple things that I think that, a couple things that I just wanted to point out. There are some graphs in here that I think are really informational. And again, I'm not sure that we had shared these in the past with the sending schools, but just to know, it looks like about 70% of our budget is based off salary and benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And on average, a school district can range between 70 to 85% of their budget being salary and benefits. So I think we're doing fairly well there. I mean, it's always the most expensive thing, but we're doing really well and we're in line with other school districts. But keeping that in mind, doesn't matter if inflation didn't go up. It doesn't matter if the cost of XYZ went up. Purely based off salary and benefits, our budget is always going to be increasing.
Mm-hmm.
There's just not much we can do about that.
It sort of makes sense that we're in that lower end of it too, with the cost of equipment in our budget. That might kind of offset making it 70% instead of 80%.
Well, and I think another point is support staff, because we don't have, we have our lab assistants, but we don't have a lot of additional special ed costs or bus drivers or food service workers, those sorts of things. So there's a lot of expenses that we don't see as
right now.
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
Lyman, you have a question?
So, is my math right that we can say that 70% of the 11.3% healthcare gets us to our level funding at 9 or whatever it is? Did that make any sense at all?
No, I followed you, Lennon.
So healthcare went up. Thank you, Scott. Healthcare went up 11%. And so if our budget were to go up 70% of 11%,
Right.
that would be 9% or something like that. Right.
Right.
And then we have our additional costs. So when you say our baseline is 10, 70% of that baseline is simply healthcare costs going up.
Correct. Yeah. And, one thing that I put on here, and I purposely, it's not an error. It says our facility cost and supplies increased. Well, that's not exactly true. Our facilities costs have increased, but not our supplies. I did not increase any supplies for our programs, their supply budgets. There are specific wants and needs that I've included in the additional funding, but I have not changed the amount of supplies, the funding anyway that we have for programs right now. So and so this is what I was talking about by object, and usually that just means like salaries, benefits, these bigger kind of expenses, and you can see how big salaries, benefits are, and the others are fairly small. I thought it was just interesting to represent that. And then the next slide is by function, and function really means like department or activity, and you can see 57% is spent on general instruction. We spend the majority of our budget. The next highest expense for us is the operational buildings, and that's paid directly to VUUSD. And the other are just very, very minimal. I don't even think that technology made its own little mark on here because of how small of a pie piece it is.
3%. 3.1%.
Technology services,
Oh, is that?
3.1.
Oh, yep, 3.1. Yep. So it's
The board is 1.2%.
board is 1.2, but that's only because that has, you guys have the
SBA.
insurance.
Yep.
Yeah.
Visit, yeah.
I thought it was just kind of interesting to look at. And when we're talking about our budget, we're trying to sell our budget. There's some important factors. And Jody touched on this before, but when we talked about FTEs, it's really hard. We all know this, but budgeting for the discrepancy between current FTE counts and the billable FTEs. So for those people that don't know what it is, or this is new information, there's a couple different numbers that we're working with. The current FTE count, that's like the head count, that's the number of students actually in programs. Billable FTEs is the number of students I'm actually able to bill for. The number I'm able to bill for is based off 6 semester average, so 3-year average based on how many students. So those numbers, unless we're stagnant for 3 or more years, they aren't going to align. And you really run into problems when you're growing too fast or you're declining too fast. For us, growing too fast. In 3 years, we've opened 3 new programs. It's going to take a while for our FTEs to catch up to that. But we don't want to go too slow, because when we come into our new building, we can't open 5, 6, 7, probably shouldn't even open more than 2, 3 that's really pushing it in a year until this funding model gets changed, if it gets changed.
Which could happen somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. And so an important thing that I was thinking about with this is, and I alluded to it before, I don't think I built a flexible enough budget this year, and that's a learning curve. We really we budgeted really well last year, meaning like our allowable tuition and our announced tuition are very, very close, which is great. But this year, our budget is very, very tight. We're fully staffed. There is no room for errors or big expenses. So we just need to make sure when we're going forward, note to self, we need to be a little bit more flexible with that. Prioritizing the essentials, postponing or phasing in non-critical expenses, that sort of thing. You can see, so here, when we're giving our presentation, again, we're talking about head count versus FTE versus billable. So this year, we had 220 students, that's a head count, but there's only 217 FTEs, and I'm only able to bill for 184. So there's a discrepancy of what, almost 36 students that we have that we can't bill for. So next year, when we're talking about increasing capacity, yes, we want to do so, but we really need to make a staggered approach. If we're fully enrolled next year with 271 students, I still can only bill for 194 students. You know, why they do that is so that there's not this fluctuation in their spending schools. So that one year you don't have 20 more students and you can't budget for it. It's to smooth the transition. But for us, if we're opening program, it causes us to have those kind of transitions if we're doing these opening program type things. What is this? On mine, it's sideways. So now we get into the budget. Again, when we're looking at kind of like we are looking at level services. I know.
Why is yours like that? Why don't you go back to your other sheet?
I guess I could probably just go to the actual presentation.
It's also, this piece is also linked on Michelle's business office report, or in your packet if you're here.
Well, while I pull it up, is there anything glaringly that you
As the
questions?
student enrollment increases at the Career Center, does it inherently decrease at the sending schools?
Complicated.
Right, because they're not.
If we're a full day with academics, then yes, right? But it's complicated because we get direct funding and then we get the FTE, the 6th semester from them. And it sort of depends on the tuition, their tuition and our tuition, what that in between amount is.
So
but it's still their student.
Right.
Still graduates
They
from
get
there.
to count them as students. They still get some funding for them, even though.
Unless
unless
our cost is a lot more than theirs.
Right, until our tuition eats that up, if it eats up all of it.
Right.
But no,
What happened this year?
their enrollment, no, it went up this year.
What
No,
went up?
base funding.
What? Say that
It's
again?
coming year.
This coming year is going down.
Yeah.
But the schools are going up.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's, I don't think that's the case. The Career Centers enrollment is going up and could grow.
Right.
The number of enrolled students in this state
It's going
It's
down.
going down.
continues to decrease.
Right.
Yep.
So
Taxes are higher because.
right. I can formulate
Yeah.
the next company.
Carrie, question?
Yes, when you did this budget, were you talking, where was the bond vote?
I'm open. So still have a little bit of a fund balance that we did not have to use for the welding. We were able to use a lot of our general fund last year because we had so many unfilled positions. So we still have quite a bit of a fund balance that's not earmarked for anything. So,
Well,
Okay.
it depends on our facilities decisions.
right.
Right, but I didn't know, so we're looking at numbers that might change is what I'm saying, right? Because we don't,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, we're bringing you these options tonight and a lot of what ifs. And we need to figure out what is the will of the board moving forward so that when I go to Twinfield tomorrow night, I know what to say to them. No pressure, but lots of pressure.
Yeah, no pressure.
So I was, part of what you're talking about, like, if the legislature is going to potentially change the way funding happens for schools, which has serious traction currently.
Yeah.
Do we have a contingency plan of any sort as to how all of this will flush out? Or do we have any idea of how it would change?
Can only get better for us. We're doing a 6-semester average. It
Yeah,
does
maybe
not-
throw that out the window, right? Like,
Right, if they throw it out and give us, so I played with the numbers here. If I keep going for another couple what if slides, I wrote, what if FTEs and billable FTEs were aligned? Well, if they were aligned and we had the same cost, same budget, tuition would be reduced by almost 5%.
But that means that if Harwood actually has 35 students here, instead of getting billed for 30 of them, they get billed for 35 in that tuition, right?
Right.
So
Who
how
do you
are we
want to-
looking, whose
Who's gonna
perspective are we
benefit?
looking from,
Right.
right? There's also the potential of not only for school funding to change for all of our sending schools, but with whatever they decide to do with CTE, if they decide to move us into one CTE district, with that governance change, there's gonna be a funding shift change too. What VACTED has asked for and what they talked about before COVID was playing with the idea of, we take this off the top and make it non-competitive. We continue to ask for non-competitive funding. We don't want sending schools saying to their kids, you can't go there because we need to keep you here, right? We want students to have options. And as long as it feels competitive, that makes it difficult. But if we keep taking funding from our sending schools to pay for our programming, it feels competitive.
So should we be considering ourselves our own district?
So we are our own district,
Right, but we're not.
but we're not an
We're getting
LEA.
Funded, right.
We're
So-
funded differently, yes.
Right, so is that the next step is my question? Or should that be the next step? Is that something that we should be pursuing or lobbying for, or whatever the case may be?
I think any of us should be lobbying for a way that our funding is not competing with our sending schools.
And then also the problem is with diminishing student population, then you could see how a school might say, you stay here at our school because that way we'll have more students enrolled and we could offer this advanced placement course. But if 5 of you are going to the career center, then we don't have the student body to support that level of educational opportunity at our school. Right? I mean, that's why we need a community high school. That's why we need a Central Vermont Regional High School.
And I think it's a little bit of both. They are still able to count their students. They're their students. It's just that they're not accessing what they're offered, so they can't offer it. So it's not necessarily like they're.
Well, they're not losing all the money, but they are having to pay tuition.
But enrollment wise, numbers wise, we're not. They're still their students.
Right.
It's a one. But yeah, it's not
Like
fair.
it's still the elephant in the room. There's fewer and fewer children
Right.
in school, yet our costs don't go down. And I know enough about this to make it confusing, but to your general person out there, that doesn't make sense to anybody. If this hand has less, this would have more. It doesn't make sense, and you can't. I try to talk to people out in the streets, and they're mad.
Yeah. Yes. No, it doesn't make sense. And the health insurance is a statewide bargain agreement. If at our level, we have.
Do we adhere to any student-teacher ratio?
Ours is different because of programming, so we have very specific rules from the AOE on the top number we can have. So in
Oh,
our
really?
heavy trades where it's dangerous,
Yeah.
we can have 16 with one teacher. We can have 5 additional if there's a second person, adult in the room. That's how we use our lab assistants with co-op days.
Yeah.
So when you see 21, we have 16 first years and then 5 co-op students who are there on occasion, not all the time.
Right.
And then we have a lab assistant to support that space 50% of the time, so they know what's going on, so they can work with the kids when the instructor is working with the co-op students. But we have very specific rules around that for most of our programs, not all of them. Some of them could do the recommended number at the state level.
Patrick, you have a question?
Yes, I do. I'm curious if I know that in the Washington Central School District, probably all across the state, we're constrained by not increasing our budgets by a certain percentage, or we get the term is double taxed. I don't quite understand exactly how that works, but is the Career Center constrained by the same principle?
No, because our budget gets approved and then it's embedded into all of your sending school budgets.
Yeah.
So it just plays a role that way. We don't have those constraints at all on us.
Okay.
We just have that complicated formula, but we do want to be thoughtful, especially given 6 of you are representing your Sunday school boards. We
Yeah.
want to be thoughtful about the impact on your boards and how this comes across. But if ours gets approved, if our budget goes out there and gets approved by the electorate, you have to pay it. That's the requirement.
Yeah, and so where does it go after this conversation? And you have conversations with all the school boards. Does it go to a ballot on all of the sending schools? Okay.
Yep, so it gets voted on separate from your budget. We try to be very clear in those presentations that we're giving this presentation so that your superintendent can plan and your board can plan their budget. So to know what is the increase or what is the potential impact on your budget. And really, a lot of schools, it's a small amount. Some of our schools have larger numbers of students. So I think, Patrick, your district probably has about 55-ish. At this point, Barry has the most with about 75. Harwood's probably really close to that 30 number that I said, somewhere in there. It might be 35, but so thinking about 35 times that number of tuition, making sure that's in the budget, because if ours gets approved, then you have to pay it. That's Sunday school. They don't have a choice, but they are separate. The electorate goes out and they vote for their school. So in Washington Central, they're voting for Washington Central, and then they have a separate ballot for Central Vermont Career Center.
Okay.
And we were lucky to have the support in March that a lot of our sending schools did not have in March. So we got approved right away this past March. It was a tighter group, like a tighter yes to no, but it still was like 3,000 or 4,000 difference between passing and not passing it.
Guy, question?
Yeah, so Jody and Michelle, given what you just presented, do you have a recommendation?
Our recommendation is to really think about the what ifs. Like if, as we look at, and we know that program quality is scheduled to talk about programming next month. And so I understand that I might be going to all of our sending school districts and sharing, we're still considering these 3 options, give us some feedback. But we're looking at what if we duplicate an existing program because we want to meet the needs of more kids, right? So what if we duplicate one of the heavies that has a bunch of applicants to it in the same space we'd have to add an instructor, but we wouldn't have to add equipment or space. Then that's a cost of $156,000, which has an impact on the budget, right? Of plus 14%. If we close a program, that has a reduction of about that much. If we close 2 programs, double that much. If we move a program off site, a specific program that we've talked about in program quality, to up the numbers of that program and they other program that share that space, that's gonna impact a 96,000. So Lyman, you had asked that question earlier in program quality. So that's a 12.9% increase. What if there's a change in our funding formula, and it goes from the 6 semester average to the students we actually have, right? How does that change it? If we close 2 programs and duplicate 1 program, what does that look like? If we stop the facility project, put a hold on that and pause it, there's a reduction there. So really thinking, we care about the number of applicants we have, and we're concerned about the number of students we turn away. And we also recognize that this is a really difficult environment for our sending schools and passing their budgets. And we want to be thoughtful about the decisions we make to move forward. Which makes us not want to make any recommendations, honestly. It doesn't feel comfortable, right? Doesn't feel good. Michelle, those 3 different columns. The first one was just the level funded.
First ones is just level funded, the knowns and the unknowns as best as I can.
That's the light green.
Anticipate the light green.
The 973.
Yep.
Yep.
That would increase tuition. Yep, 9.73%. The next one, the middle, kind of a little bit, next green up. That's of course, that's as is as well. The only thing I did increase on that was the new brake lathe and demonstration cars that Auto had been asking for, and also a new Granite CAD program in design and fabrication. That would increase it by a percent. And then if we wanted to take 1 more percent up, that would give us basically all the programs that had asked, all the asks for the programs. Not everything, but the 3D printer, leather sewing machine, some mannequins that we need, moving the electrical in some classrooms. It gives us a lot more flexibility, essentially.
Michelle,
Stayed pretty close. I mean, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the, what you were talking about before with the base education rate
Yeah.
change, is that reflected in this chart here?
Yes. Yes.
So the increase at the bottom, the percent increase, that's our tuition increase.
Mhm.
It's not
That's
the
estimation.
increase
No,
to,
the top shows the actual increase in the budget.
Yeah.
10.8, 12, 13.
and so when we plug those numbers into that spreadsheet I showed you,
Mhm.
it changes the amount of the direct billing to our sending schools.
And so the timeline we're under, we're presenting, Jody's presenting to districts, need to
Sorry,
know
tomorrow.
where we're going. But also I have to announce tuition by January 15th. That's to all of our sending schools officially. Most of my numbers are in. Some of the numbers that I still am unsure of is, of course, negotiations. There's 2 contracts being negotiated now. Those are not going to come in before January 15th. Those I'm going to have to just leave as is and make the best educated guess that I can. So I don't see much change in any of these. The only thing that I can see that could change is when we're talking about programs. And we're going back to the kind of what ifs. What if we were reducing programs, increasing programs, moving programs offsite?
So this tonight is for informational purposes, and we would have to approve at some point.
You're
And,
gonna have to approve at that January 13th budget,
okay,
giving us your best recommendation for talking to sending school boards would be super helpful tonight.
okay. So we as members of local boards need feedback from the local boards as to what their beliefs are for our budget, for
We know they're gonna tell you go with the lowest.
Yes,
Because
of
there's
course.
no way
There's no
any
way.
of them are going to. So your best bet is if you want something is to say it now so that when Jody goes to sending schools, she can already have the.
What
Let's
do you
sell
need
it.
from us for tomorrow?
Well, I mean, we can present these options and the what ifs are not addressed in them, right?
Yeah, this slide isn't even,
We're
this
not-
slide is for you folks
Yeah.
and anybody
Right.
watching ours. It's not a
Right.
discussion at the other
Right,
boards.
okay.
Yeah, that's
so-
what, okay.
Patrick, we'll start
Yeah,
with
yeah, thanks. I was just gonna say, I don't, I think on Washington Central Board, I don't think there's certainly won't be much appetite for a lot of what ifs. So I guess your last comment kind of solved the question, my point, I think, is like, I think go in with what you think is reasonable and go in with maybe some wiggle room on some things, but really, I think the board would be receptive to, this is what it costs. This is why the numbers are different this year. They're not, none of this is in our control, but we do have control of maybe a plus or minus 1% here. And that's kind of what it is. I don't think that, I think that they'll be grumpy, but I don't, I think that, you won't get a whole bunch of pushback from my board, I don't think, from this story, because I think it's a solid story.
Thank you. Lyman?
Just looking at the what ifs again, can you tell me, so where we close one program, we reduce 156,000, and then the budget plus 7.5%, I think I missed something along that.
That's based off our level services. So level services right now is what, 11%? So if we closed a program, we could reduce by 156,000. So the increase to the budget would only be the 7.5 versus the 11. These are all estimates based off level services. So what I did to the numbers based off level services.
Unless you had a dog program or course, I would never recommend closing programs. That all that's gonna do is open up a Pandora's box of,
Define dog.
something you're having trouble filling. Of course, you're having trouble filling.
Thank you.
Guy, comment? Question?
Yeah, while we gave you a fairly decent range last meeting, I'm inclined to go towards the level services budget right now for this particular reason that has nothing to do with anything you guys did, but based on the announced tax rate, people are still like getting a little wigged out about it. And anything we can do to like fend that off, and it has nothing to do with us, but perception is reality, and that's just my comment.
Remind me, how many programs have we added recently?
3 in the past 3 years.
We don't know what we're
So
losing.
nowhere in this are we adding a program next year.
Right.
We've
But we're also not
informed the
taking any away.
AOE that we're not doing that.
Right?
Well, we don't
And
know.
we're also not taking any
We
away.
don't know.
We don't know about that.
We don't know. We don't know if we're gonna have the enrollment.
We're collecting that data, and that's on the program quality agenda for January.
Okay. Lyman?
But we kind of have to think about that as you're going into your meeting. Because if we have to close 2 programs, let's say, that's $312,000, taking us down to 4%, right? So if we were to do the baseline, Does that give us the latitude if things change and we do have to close those programs, that we could then use that money for, to start with, to get the other programs the money that they need for their supplies and whatnot?
Yeah.
So I would keep, no, I would keep then the two what ifs, because we don't know. You know, if we may have to close a program because we will be under enrolled. We may have to close two programs. We can't say exactly what the budget will be, but we do know if that happens, it will reduce it by $156,000. You know, the tuition would be 5.5%. I wouldn't go through closing two programs because we're gonna do it because we want to bring costs down.
Yeah.
This is only if we have to.
And this slide is only for you. This is
Right.
not part of the presentation
Right.
tomorrow,
Right.
Jenna.
Yeah.
It's sounding like the will of the board is to go with the level funded budget.
Yeah.
On the sheet that we're not sharing with everybody else.
Well, they can do it.
No,
they
no,
can
no,
do
I
it
was just.
here.
They
They need to
can,
get
they
the
can see
context.
this is recorded or
Right,
this
yeah,
here,
yeah.
like, yeah.
In your preliminary numbers and discussions or whatever that you're looking at right now.
Yeah.
Does it really look like you're gonna have a program or two that, well,
It's hard to say. We're halfway
I know,
through
but-
our first round applications.
what you
But-
got, tell me.
We have a program that's paused this year. And we have a program that if we go a third year with less than 8 students, the AOE is gonna tell us we can't do it. Right, so there is a potential for 2 programs to be under enrolled. But we're not done with our first round applications, and so nobody wants to make that decision prematurely.
Right.
And both of those programs that have been low enrolled are the only ones in the state. And there's so many reasons to keep them, right?
Other than. kids
Other
wanting to
than-
do it. I'm
We're
not
not-
being,
yeah.
flippant. I'm
No,
being serious.
absolutely true.
When you pull those numbers together, you guys, when you pull the 156, 312, that includes everything.
I averaged
Teachers.
a couple of them together to get an average. Those are not.
They're not hard numbers
Different-
to those programs.
Right.
but
Each
they're-
program
Right.
has a little bit of a different budget, but that's the average of, I chose 3.
Thank you.
Guy, any comment?
Yeah, so Jody, when I was at open house and stopped into one of the programs that we're talking about potentially being in danger, one of the comments from the instructor was, the problem is what the program is called. And there was no wiggle room between what we would like to call it as opposed to what the Department of Education would like to call it. You have any comments on that?
We did shift the name in the program of studies this year, so it has the title that the AOE gave it, plus a little extra so that people know what it's about. So the program of studies that came out in September is an updated title because we can advertise it the way that we need to, even though it has a specific name assigned to it. Does that make sense?
Well, it might, but did it make sense for you?
I think it's very clear what the program is this year for students applying and anyone who looks at our program of studies.
All right, so we will move on toward January. And anything else from our administration on this?
Shall we continue with talking about it being level services? Like, is that a comfortable, is that when Jody's go on the lesser end for this? I mean, there's basically 2 scenarios that would happen is if we choose this. Is one, those programs stay open and we're set on a really, really tight budget next year. Okay. Or one or 2 of those programs are closed and we have a little bit more wiggle room and we actually will come in lower.
but still at this point in time, it would be the equivalent of level services that we'd be offering to the sending schools.
Right.
Okay,
Because with level services, they're still paying more.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
That's just the reality.
They are, but at least we can give them a better estimate of numbers.
And they
what
would like to hear that.
They need those, yeah.
all right. Do we have a consensus on using that statement of level services as we go out to the boards? Guy, you have a question?
Yeah, just a comment. I came in tonight's meeting kind of leaning towards level services budget only because I feel very confident about what the facilities committee is doing. And, at the end of, for me, at the end of the day, that is like the Greyhound for us as a board, because it will solve and help a lot of problems, but I could be wrong.
All right, thank you. Now, moving on, we have, are we ready to move on,
Do we have
everyone?
to vote?
No, this is not an action item. This is information and discussion.
Okay.
All right.
The action items are coming up.
Right,
And I will apologize that our timeline is way off tonight.
right.
Way off.
Well, what I was wondering, and let me ask this, and if I'm wrong, it'll be the first time this year. No. But would it be possible to table these things to January, or do we need to act on them tonight?
All right, and just go into executive session?
Because it's, I don't know with
Table all of 6.
6, is there anything in there that needs to be done for you people to conduct business between now and January?
Lyman, what is your goal on the superintendent evaluation timeline? You're muted, thanks.
I'm hoping that we would get it out for the January meeting. For final review at the January meeting.
So you'll have a draft at the January meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like you don't need action tonight.
Okay, so those were, I was thinking of all the 6.2s. Do we need to do anything with early retirement 6.3?
No.
All right, budget, no action, board stipends, any action?
We'll talk about that.
Okay, in executive session?
Yeah.
Okay, and superintendent goals, Lyman, we've covered that. So all of 6.6, we can table to the January meeting, and we'll do that because of time and weather. And I think our public will understand that situation. All right, so we do need to move into executive sessions. So, let me get my sheet to cheat.
This was well worded, Jody. Thank you.
Alrighty,
I get a lot of my stuff from the Harwood boards.
so tonight we have 4 executive session meetings, executive session issues, that, let's see how they deal with this. If we can cover them all in one motion and then deal with them collectively. Superintendent evaluation, all right, that's a separate one. Negotiations, some facilities. It looks like,
Giving this to
they were,
you.
okay, grievances, right, so we've got one, we have, number 1 that has to do with the facilities project, and, that would be 1 VSA 313A2-10, which would be other permissible reasons. So that's one executive session. The second one, negotiations. also falls under that. So we could cover those under the same motion. Appointment of a public official. I believe that's VSA 313A1 would be the third one.
And we don't need to do the fourth one, I don't think.
Right, we don't need to do the last one.
Okay, so, we don't do that, but, so we can do the first bullet and the second bullet we can do under VSA 313A210, and the third one we can do under VSA A1. And so we'll have 2 executive sessions.
VSA what?
VSA A1, 313A1.
Oh.
313A1.
Okay.
So we'll do these 2. So I need a motion to enter into executive session under VSA 313A2-10. Do I have a motion for that? Okay. I need and Jana, Scott. Okay. So we'll do that. All in favor of
Thank you, Mike.
entering into executive session?
Thank you. Thanks so much.
All those in favor of moving into executive session?
Aye.
All right, we have returned to general session. Do we have a motion as a result of our work in executive session?
Yes, we do.
Scott, what is your motion?
I vote to accept the recommendation of the facilities committee.
I need a second.
Second.
Jim, any discussion on the recommendation of the facilities committee? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries.
Do we have to do something about the
Let's get
bond
back to
vote?
the executive session.
Not at this time. Right? No, not at this time. So we will do that. We're just accepting the recommendation of the facilities committee. Now we need to move back into executive session in accordance with VSA 313A1.
8:50.
Okay.
I have to regret this.
So can I have a motion to move into
So moved.
executive session? Moved by Scott, second by Corey. Yes, I'll remember that, my grandson's name. All right, Corey, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none. We are now going back into executive session.
I move that we divide the stipend in 11 parts and you're paid for the number of months that you serve.
Second that.
Second by Patrick.
Thank
Any
you.
discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposition?
Alice will kill you.
No, I'll just come with Alice and throw snowballs. All right, very good. Motion passes. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, motion by Scott, second by Jana. All those in favor?
Aye.
Very good. We are adjourned.